Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Elephant in the Room. Hi, Taranjeet.
Hi, Moyan.
So let's go to the opening reel and see you right soon. Hello, people. Welcome to another show of Elephant in the Room. It's Tuesday today, the 21st of April. Um, we are very happy to be back with you, and we just wanted to pick off where we stopped yesterday. So yesterday we had a very interesting conversation with our good friend Zorab, and we managed to bring him in for this quick conversation, and I really like his idea of Avengers, assembling the best team on a call to basis, or the analogy of Batman, where we Gotham City just need to show the bat signal and here comes the hero. So I thought maybe for today we less can dwell into details, because I think we wanted to share more yesterday, but we couldn't have much time. Maybe just to hear your thoughts on this, Taranjeet.
Sure, thank you. Once again, it's always great to be back with you, Moyan. And a couple of things are playing out here. From yesterday's discussion with Zorab, we were talking about the whole area around the relooking of the workforce, and how do we now go out there to effectively look at cost containment, the composition of the workforce, and also the structure. And business sustainability in the short term, in the medium term, is now absolutely critical. And in order for us to do this, there's also a need for us to revamp go-to-market strategies. There's a need to relook at our processes and technologies that we are looking at. But more importantly, the type of support infrastructure from a people component side. And that human capital management, that human capital perspective is, I think, what we should be looking at today, because that is important. The role of HR practitioners, or the role of HR, in my mind, not for all companies, but at least for those companies that come to my mind, become more like order takers rather than strategic business partners. We would like to think that we are strategic business partners, but in reality, we are governed by what the business requires. We're governed by what the board requires, rather than sitting and having this conversation in a proactive, constructive fashion. So with that in mind, the question then is, what does the workforce look like for tomorrow? The days of workforce optimization in the traditional sense of the word have gone. We now need a very different structure to the workforce, given the fact that the operating model has changed. The way in which we now go out there to relook at the approach and the structure now becomes very, very poignant. I refer to Darman's view a couple of days back, when he says we need now to relook at the way the implications of this model has on the way we work and the structure that we have. And it is in this perspective that the SWAT team comes out, the Avengers, or the team, Batman's team in this regard. A small, select group of people who are skilled in a particular area. They now need to come out with very clear focus on outcomes that are expected. The question that we now ask, and I'm asking now, is how do we select these people? What are the criterias for selection that are we looking at? Will the roles be the same, or the roles have changed? Those are some of the questions in my mind. Muihan, what are your thoughts?
Um, Wait, before I go back to what you have just stated, maybe it's good to do a shout out to all our audience. And I think once again, we have both Zorab and Dr. Mike here. Great shout out to Zorab, to you. Thanks for tuning in again, and as well as Dr. Michael Heng from Singapore. For the rest who have just tuned in, we will appreciate if you can just comment hi or hello or introduce yourself in the comment section so we know who you are, as we can go. Hi, Hilson. Just shout out to Hilson again. And as well as we also want your help to actually help us to maybe share a watch party so that we can capture a greater audience for that matter, and also to subscribe to our YouTube channel in that sense. All right. I think it's a very good perspective that you just started, and I would like to actually look at that further. And to your question of how do we actually select this blended workforce team, I think primarily would very much focus more on the contractual, part-time, permanent, or temporary staff basis in that sense. And I think this is one area that more organizations need to start looking at from various perspectives. And I think the recruitment process doesn't much differ, but probably the key important things that we are moving forward in the new paradigm or in the new order, so to say, is that now we need to start ensuring that our people have additional competencies in relation to managing things remotely. So this whole idea of remote project management, have the candidate done this before? And again, the candidate may not be a full-timer, may not be a permanent staff, it could be a contractual staff. But I feel that in moving forward, this one requirement that moving forward will be a key requirement. In fact, one of the key areas that I keep emphasizing this in all my talks in a different university, because one of the key questions that most university ask me, or students ask me, what are some of the future skills that is needed? And I feel this is the one that, thanks to MCO or thanks to coronavirus, it has hastened or accelerated our appreciation and understanding of it, which is actually remote digital collaboration skills. And I feel that this will be the main competencies in moving forward for recruitment. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? So whether the ability of the candidate or the staff or the employee in moving forward able to manage a group of people, either directly reporting to him or not even directly reporting to him, it could be his peers or a project team, and able to remotely lead a project together with his team. And that would be a testament of success in moving forward. And this is something very, very different, because you will come to realize even in our show, sharing, those who know me and Taranjeet, we sharing to you in a room or in a meeting room or in a training room is so different from how we are sharing to you now. So the whole focus of facilitating via online, managing a meeting online, project management is very, very different. And this becomes a very interesting idea, because one of the things that I also like to emphasize, and I found this study was many years back, I think it was 8 years back, the only way to actually build this, and I think Taranjeet, your son will be very happy to hear that, to build this skill is to actually play more online games, reality virtual online games, which you need to work in a team. Of course, I come from a generation where World of Warcraft was one of those very famous games that, we gather people around the world who don't know each other, but virtually, collaboratively, they work on a very mission. And these are the skill sets that you realize that actually enhances when they go to the workforce, because they need to work with another party, which is few hundred miles, few hundred kilometers from where they are. They have not met this person at all, and yet they are able to work together to address a certain task and achieve a certain target. So I think this one skill set which I think is very different in moving forward, especially in terms of managing or trying to bring in a more blended workforce in moving forward, which then sets up to the idea of maybe performance management. So maybe you have some comment on online games maybe first, then I'll get you to talk about performance management.
Sure. So I like it. You can't go wrong with the Warcraft and what have you. But my going in here is also the contrasting view, and the view is around the actual social networking skills, which, for all intents and purposes, are fundamental in the workforce. So for me, having to work away from home, away from office rather, for me having to work remotely, Dr. Heng mentioned about telecommuting, absolutely, but you have an underlying premise to say that we are socially aware of each other, because we do have that level of connect. And so my going in here is collaboration is great, as long as there is a means for us to jive in this session. And that's why team building workshops and team building sessions will never go out of place. There will always be a role for that. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but definitely in about 6 months to 7 months, there will be a requirement for that. But it also begs the question around, when we do talk about telecommuting, how am I now processing the type of interactivity that is required? How do I know that the guy is genuine in his response to me? You won't get that from a video call. You won't get that. You will probably get that if I'm sitting in front of you and looking at the way your eyes are shifting. I'm sitting in front of you looking at your body language. So there are different nuances coming out here. If you ask me, Muihan, it's not as simple as that. But
Yeah.
I think, quite honestly, if we take all of this into account and we look at it from a holistic perspective, we can work around, if you ask me. Your
I, I
thoughts?
I would definitely concur on that point, and then being facilitators in many sessions. And I remember I was attending one of the sessions with our common friend Mohan Singh from Taylor's University. I think Mohan got me to attend the teachers conference, and I think you were supposed to come, but you had something on last minute. So it was a very interesting perspective, because you were gathering all the educators, and this was more academic in nature. And one of the biggest, and this was about 6 months back, just to give some context, one of the biggest talking point in that one-day conference among the academicians were, would the academics or the lecturer per se be relevant in moving forward? Because this whole idea of e-learning, of e-teaching and things like that is the way forward, and we have massive online courses. So would the lecturers be needed just to make sure that they shoot one good e-learn and that's it, we no longer need that? And I find that interestingly, when they presented some of the data that we were doing research, at least for their academics, which I think is also relevant in the corporate world in this perspective, they still found that majority mode of learning is still the physical demonstration of physical in nature. Because having a physical presence is very different. It is more than just words. It is more than just showing some information or knowledge download. It really has got to do with integrating the emotions, the cognitive ability, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the conclusion, of course, sounds like a biased one for the academicians that day was, uh, there will always be a role for a physical teacher in the classroom. And I think one of their keynote speaker was the ex-education minister of Bhutan, said very aptly that even knowledge download, and you have given everything, and your students would find everything else from the internet, from books and things like that. The presence of a teacher just being there to put a pat on your shoulder or to hug you in that sense, translate all educational values tremendously in that sense. And when I reflected on that moment, I was sitting and listening to that, I thought it was also very pertinent in our kind of work that we do on a corporate basis, because there are so many times that I think even before COVID-19, we were already telecommunicating to a certain extent. And we find that a lot of our friends, colleagues, and business associates there tends to be zoned out during a con call or video call. Yeah, harder to zone out, but as well, you can be watching this, but you can have three other screens operating in that sense, and nobody can actually knows that in that sense. So I think that physical presence is always important, and I think we are grappling and balancing to ensuring that we are social distancing to a certain extent, but at the same time effectively bring the best out of our people. So
No, no.
that's what I look at.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that's where the emotional intelligence needs to come into play. That's where that EQ piece is absolutely critical. But let's move on the discussion to the area around management of these teams and how do we go out there to effectively manage. One of the things that then comes to my mind is if we are bringing in the so-called Avengers team, as Zoraf aptly called them, and during our discussions yesterday, he made mention to this. What happens to those people who are within the organization who may see themselves as being sidelined? What happens there? Is it because they are viewed to be irrelevant? I don't know. Is it because they feel that the skills that they're bringing to the table may not be as apt or as adequate as what is absolutely required? Well, Darman raised this point, and quite honestly, if you're sitting at home, and this is a real issue right now, if you're sitting at home for the last 3 weeks, which we all are, and we don't get any calls from our employers, guess where that discussion is heading to over the next couple of weeks. So it's a very pertinent point here. And that then begs the question as to what relevance do I have in this whole scheme of things with my organization? And whilst we talk about that relevance, how do I now go out there to manage expectations of people who are viewed to be relevant and those who are not, as the case may be? Muihan?
So I have very wanted to show this comment by Dr. Michael Hing, who suggested that new perspective needed to see to apply in terms of telecommunicating and teleworking. In fact, maybe I'll just say this now and say this later so that everybody will be aware. We will have a great pleasure of hosting Dr. Michael Hing tomorrow. Maybe I'll just share the screen. And I also wanted to probably ask him more specifically, maybe what is the perspective? I think that will be something that will be good for us to discuss. So join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. Same time to actually come and listen to our Dr. Michael Hing from Singapore, who's been tuning in since almost the day we started. And we wanted to also look at the perspective from Singapore, but as well as some of these key topics that we've been discussing on a daily basis. So yes, maybe to just give back some perspective, I think it is a very well good focus that you mentioned. And I feel that one of the challenges, and I have played this role before, the so-called Avengers, because we have certain clients who needed some work to be done, but yet hiring a permanent staff is a challenge. But at the same time, there are also shifting priorities within the upper management. They thought probably it's good risk management to just hire the expert to come in, the so-called machinery to get the thing done and move on in that sense. And we find that a lot of times when in my experience working with different organizations, that still creates a sense of uneasiness among the staff per se. And of course, that's come back to transparency, and whether management was utterly transparent of what is the purpose of this person that we brought in, how long he will be around, and what is his jurisdiction or non-jurisdiction. And that's where I think becomes utterly important in terms of how do we communicate. Of course, communication is also a subset of the greater organizational trust. So if we have a very low trust among the organization or the low trust climate within the organization, maybe embarking on this blended approach may be a very hard landing for a lot of employees, and therefore create a very unnecessary disruptive cultures or disruptive behaviors in the environment. And we can look at this in two perspectives. Of course, certain portion of the staff will say that, oh, these three people, they are contractual, therefore we should treat them like a vendor rather than a colleague. Or we can also look at the other extreme to say that these are the people that is specifically brought in because of their skill set to become part and parcel of our partner in that sense to deliver the work. So that has got to do with the softer side of things of how it's being executed. And I feel that probably this is one of the major consideration that most organizations do or do not fully embark on this as well. Maybe we also like to invite the audience to share your inputs, especially maybe from Zorab or even Dr. Michael Heng or whoever that, you know, we mean in this kind of environment that you either became the independent contractor or the independent workforce, or you were part of the management to recruit. So we also like to hear your thoughts in that sense.
One of the things that also, just to add on to that, is by all accounts, what is coming out in the media reflects a very concerning thought process around employment rates. And this is coming out from the likes of MIER's report that has been published and what have you. And it looks very ominous. It looks very dark and dim. But to be fair as well, that's because we are viewing things with one perspective. The need for change has always been there. What we are seeing right now is an exacerbation of that. And what we now need to do as employees is to shift our lens that we are looking at or looking through rather in this regard. And you have very clear instances where people have been changing jobs, whether you like it or not, simply because the environment has changed. And we call that a reframing of oneself or a reimagining of oneself. Organizations do it every so many years. There's no reason why we as individuals don't do it too. What's happening today, unfortunately, or fortunately as the case may be, is you are seeing all of these take place at one time in one particular point of perspective. But quite honestly, it has always been happening, if you ask me frankly. Now, and I'm now looking specifically at the likes of fresh graduates as they're coming out. I'm looking at the likes of individuals who have been in the same job for some time. Is there anything we can do to now re-evaluate our relevance to the organization, whether it be this organization that I'm working with today or another organization that sees me in terms of the capabilities that I'm giving? And what is also very interesting, at this point in time, I know of organizations who are losing people because they are joining other organizations in that same sector. So employment is there, albeit limited, but it's for people who are really driving value for themselves and for the organization at large. Muihan?
I think that's a very good perspective, and I also want to maybe reach out to all our audience, especially for those who, I mean, since the start of MCO have this tinkling fear that probably this may lead to further recession or retrenchment and downsizing and so on and so forth. I feel that it is very important to start thinking that the focus is change, and change has been happening since in time of memorial, if I may use this word in that sense. It's just that, like you, Ranjit rightly say, that it's now being very accelerated and rapid and happen at the same time, almost simultaneously throughout the world because of a virus in that sense. So as we are focusing on this idea of blended workforce, we also want to get our audience to start thinking, and especially for those who have some kind of fear and worry in that sense that, hey, you know, it is actually also thinking of how we can fit in and move on, and because there are different opportunities in moving forward. So whatever you and I understood as the employment per se, this may be something very different in moving forward. Yes, maybe I will just want to quickly highlight one comment by Zorab. Yes, I think this should be the one. I just read it out for everybody. An employee must not only have the relevant skill for the employer, but also demonstrate the willingness to walk the extra mile and value add, where they can, in seeing that the company sails through this tough time, all right, or during this time. And I think that's where the value and focus it is being, and I feel that it is almost critical. And thank Zorab for the timely reminder in that sense. Back to you, Taranjeet.
Sure. What we do have installed, and I'm cognizant of the time. What we do have installed over the next couple of days are some very interesting discussions. We've got, as Muihan has pointed out, we've got Dr. Michael Hin coming in tomorrow. He's going to be viewing it from a perspective of what's happening nice. It'll be a really good opportunity for us to also start asking very difficult questions of Michael in terms of his perspective and where is it that he sees this going to. I suspect it'll not be the first and last time you'll have Michael on board. I'm looking forward to this. What is also very interesting is the following day we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Hira Singh. And he has some very nice thoughts around what will drive this whole retrenchment or the whole restructuring of the workforce. What are some of the critical thoughts that have to be looked at? And when I talk retrenchment, it's not bad. It's actually workforce optimization to drive sustainability and provide justice to the people that are currently within the organization itself. That'll be the second one. And it'll be really interesting to hear what Hira, a noted author in his own right, will have to say. And lastly, we have a very astute individual that I have absolute delight of having worked with in a lot of detail. Inchesh Azmi coming in on Friday to talk about his experiences. He is, for those who do not know him, he is the CEO of CDC, Corporate Development Center, where they have been very pertinently and actively involved in this whole transitioning of people as they move out from one company into another. We'll be talking to him not as the CEO of CDC, but we'll be talking to him as an individual. And we have specifically requested for him to wear his individual's hat and provide us his own experiences in this regard. So a very exciting 3 days ahead of us, Muihan, and I'm really excited to hear what the speakers have to say. Muihan?
So, very quick one. Remember, tomorrow we will be with Dr. Michael in Elephant in the Room. So please make sure that you join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. And if you need us to remind you to send you the link to please comment down there in our comment section. Just put the word remind me and we will do the necessary. All right. So we had a great, wonderful show today as usual. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for tuning in. We look forward for your continuous support. See you again tomorrow at 6 p.m. And if I may, also just to get you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you have not, is by the same name, Elephant in the Room. Okay, this is one that we can actually. So we host, just to put perspective, we host all our daily show with some editing back onto this YouTube channel. So if you can see all of you to subscribe and to support us further. thank you very much for all your support. See you again tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Bye.